Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. Gareth here from tastytudes.com. So in the previous video, we completed the book cover design and exported the file to be used for print. Now up to this point on the course, we have been focusing on design for print. In this video, I want to cover an example for digital. So by the end of this course, you will have an understanding of design for both print and digital in Photoshop. In this tutorial, I'm going to discuss and demonstrate how I took the finished print design and from that created this digital web banner design to advertise the book online. Now the idea of this exercise is for you to experience how we can adapt a print design and export for web. So here is an example of a web banner I have created from the print design. What I have done here is superimpose the book cover onto a book to create this interesting ad to promote the book online. This is what we are going to create in this tutorial. If you would like to take a closer look at this example, you can find this in the final artwork folder in the project folder. Now, we are going to be covering a lot in this video and in quite some depth. If you wish to skip ahead to any point in this video or back, you can do so quite simply. The topics covered in this video are listed in the description and downloadable PDF, along with their times, so be sure to check that out. So to start, I'm going to set up the document for my banner. Now on this occasion, I'm going to create a standard MPU banner which is 300 pixels by 250 pixels. So drastically smaller than the book design. This will be an exercise to manage our creative in a different way. So I'll come to File, New, I'll name the document Book Web Banner, I'll make sure the value is set to pixels over on the right, and then type in a width of 300, then a height of 250. Now on this occasion, because we are creating a design for digital, it does not matter what the resolution is. What's important here is that the dimensions are correct. On this occasion, I'll just type in 150 for resolution, and I'll make sure my color mode is set to RGB. I'll click OK, and here is our new canvas. So now I'm going to start to build the creative elements. So to make this easy, I'm going to take some of the creative elements I made in the book to use in this banner here. So now I'll come into my project folder and open up the book cover design I created previously. Now if you're completely new to this course and you wish to follow along, you can also find this finished book cover design in the final artwork folder in the project folder. So with the book cover design open, I'm going to start by taking the background sky, so I'll come into the layers panel and click on the background layer folder. With the move tool, I'll click in the canvas area, click and drag up and into the banner document. I'll place my mouse cursor into the web banner canvas area and release. Now upon release, this is going to be rather large in my canvas area. This is because the print document is far larger than the web banner. So with the background now in the web banner, I'll press Command T to activate Free Transform. I'll zoom right out so I can see the bounding box. I'll press and hold Shift and Alt and drag right in, and then click the corner point to fill the banner document, and then press Enter. So just like that, I have placed in the gradient background. Now keep in mind that this document is RGB and the print document is CMYK. As I drag design elements from the CMYK document, once they appear in the web banner document, they will now become RGB. More on that later. So that's the background. So next I'm going to pull in the grass. So I'll come back into the book cover design document. With the move tool, I'll right click on the grass and select the layer. I'll then click in the canvas area and drag up into the web banner tab and drop it in. Again, I'll need to press Command T and zoom out and scale down. This time, however, I'll scale down quite a lot. I don't want the grass to be too big here, so I'll scale it down like so. So now it's not fitting across the bottom. So I'll press and hold Alt and click and drag with the move tool across to quickly duplicate the layer and add more grass like so. I'll select both layers in the layers panel. I'll press Command E and this will merge them into one layer. And I'll rename this layer to grass. So next, I want to bring in some clouds to fill the sky. So back into the book cover document, I'll navigate to the header smart object in the layers panel that contains all the clouds. I'll double click on the smart object thumbnail. This will open up the smart object, and here I can get access to all the cloud layers. Now earlier in the course, when we set up these clouds, we also applied adjustment layers to them in order to change the brightness. Now at this point, it's important to mention that this document is CMYK. Now because we are currently taking design elements from a CMYK and transferring them to an RGB document, there are limitations. For example, so with the Move tool, I'll right click on one of the clouds here. Once I have it selected, I'll press and hold Shift and also select the adjustment layer applied to it. With them both selected, I'll click and drag up into the tabs and place into my web banner document. Now notice how the creative will not appear. It will not be placed inside the new web banner. Well, this is because we are trying to drag over an adjustment layer with CMYK values. This will not cross over on this occasion. So back in the clouds document, instead of dragging both the adjustment layer and the cloud, I'm simply going to select the cloud layer, click and drag that across, and that will be placed into the document. Notice in the layers panel, this is a smart object. This cloud smart object was created in a previous episode. This is going to allow us to scale this up and down without losing any quality. So I'll press Command T and scale down the cloud in my document like so. Now on this occasion, I just want this to be a solid white shape. This cloud does include texture, but in this instance, it's so small, it's not particularly legible. It's looking a little blurry, and this is also a small composition, so it would be easier on the eye to go with a simpler approach. So I'll come into the layers panel, double click to the right of the name to call up the layer styles. So I'll give this a layer style of color overlay. On the color, I'll type in F 6 times to get a perfect white and click OK. So I'll press Command T, scale down the cloud and position it over on the side like so. Once happy, I'll press Enter. Then I'm simply going to press 7 on the keyboard. Now this is going to set the opacity to 70% quickly. So now I'm just going to duplicate this cloud around a little just to fill the sky with some clouds. I'll do this with the Move tool by pressing and holding Alt and clicking and dragging. This will duplicate the shapes, and we will also start to get multiple new layers in the layers panel. I'll also use Command T to scale various clouds up or down. I'll also toggle the opacity of some of them just to get a variety of brightness. So shortly, I'll have something that looks like this. So after I have created a few cloud examples, I'll come into the layers panel, select the top cloud, press and hold Shift, select the bottom cloud and press Command G to group them together, and I'll name the folder Clouds. So now I'm going to bring in the book. So to do this, I'm first going to create a new design element. So I'll come into the project folder, click the Create a Project folder and navigate to the Assets folder. In the Assets folder, I'll open up number 8, Book Web. So here is a file I have prepared earlier. Here we have a blank white book, and in the layers panel, we can see that this is set on top of some other layers which we can toggle on and off. So what I'm going to do now is superimpose my book cover onto this book and bring this into the web banner. So let me demonstrate a cool tip for doing this. So I'll zoom into the book. I'll come into the menu and select the rectangular marquee tool. Now I'm going to draw a selection over the book face. We can see here that the book is at a perspective, but right now I want to guess what the size of the book cover would be if it was straight on. So with the new selection, I'll press Command-Shift-N to create a new layer, and I'll name this layer Book Face and press Enter. So I'll come into the foreground colour, and here I can select any colour I like. On this occasion, I'll just go for a yellow. With the Paint Bucket tool, I'll fill this selection to get the rectangle shape like so. Great. Now once I have created this shape, I'll come into the Layers panel, right-click on the layer and click Convert to Smart Object. Next, I'll come up into the blending mode and set this to a blending mode of Multiply. So now we can see the book shadows through the colour. Okay, so here comes the tricky part. So now I'll press Command T to activate Free Transform. So I'll move the bounding box in to the width of the book face. Then I'll press and hold Command on the keyboard and drag the corner points over the book cover like so. What I'm aiming to do here is match the book face layer to the same perspective of the book cover. I'll press and hold spacebar to maneuver around the document. Still holding Command on the keyboard, I'll drag the points over the corners like so. Once I'm happy, I'll press Enter. Great. So now the book face is perfectly matching the book. Now if I come into the Layers panel and double click on the book face Smart Object thumbnail, up will pop the Smart Object, the rectangle shape we made earlier. Now why is this not distorted like in the other document? Well, upon creating the Smart Object in the previous document, we only applied the transform effects to the layer and not the contents of the Smart Object. So I'll come back into the print document, I'll press Command A to select all. With the selection all around the entire design, I'll press and hold Shift, press Command and press C. This will copy all the layers. So I'll come back into my book face Smart Object and press Command V to paste this in. Just like earlier, I'll press Command T and zoom out. I'll drag in my bottom right point to snap with the document and press Enter. So now the entire book cover is in the Smart Object. Now I'll press Command W to close the document and be sure to save. Now back into the book web document, we can now see the book cover perfectly superimposed onto the book face. Pretty cool, right? Okay, so now I want the back of the book to be red. So with the polygonal lasso tool, I'll make a selection over the back of the book like so. With the selection, I'll press Command Shift N to create a new layer. I'll call this red back. I'll choose a red color from the menu and use the paint bucket tool to fill. With the new red color, I'll set a blending mode to the layer of multiply. So that now finishes the book. So now I'll come into the layers panel and toggle the visibility of all the background layers, so all I can see is the transparency around the book. I'll come to File, Save As. I'll navigate to my project folder and save this inside as a web book cover and click OK. Once saved, I'll close the document and come back to my banner. So now I'll come up to File and select Place Embedded. If you're using an earlier version of Photoshop, this will just be Place. So I'll navigate to my project folder where I just saved the book cover graphic. I'll click it and press Place. Upon click, it will appear inside my new banner composition as a Smart Object. I'll scale it up slightly, press Enter and move it over to the right. Next, I'll double click on the new Smart Object layer name and rename this to Book. Now, if at this point I feel the bottom green of the book is clashing too much with the grass in the background, I'll select the grass layer. I'll press Command U to activate Hue Saturation. Here I'll toggle the hue and saturation just a little to create a bit more contrast. So next, I want to create a subtle white glow around the book. So I'll double click on the book layer to bring up the layer styles. I'll select Outer Glow. Over on the right, I'll set the blending mode to normal, the opacity to 80%. I'll click on color and type in F 6 times for a perfect white. I'll set the spread to 25, the size to 50, and push the range all the way up to 100% and click OK. Now I have an issue here. I'm not really liking the white glow on the green grass area here. Ideally, I just want the glow to be on the sky area. So what I'll do here is click on the book layer and press Command J to duplicate. This will also duplicate the layer styles applied. So I'll move the new layer in the layers panel down under the grass layer. Then I'll come back to the book layer on top of the grass. I'll click on the layer style in the layer and drag down to the trash can to remove the styles. So now I have the glow effect around the book in the sky area and not on the grass area. Perfect. So I'll quickly rename this new layer under the grass layer to Book Glow. So now I want to add the messaging of my ad. So I'll press T to activate the type tool. I'll click to the top left of the add. Up in the control panel, I'll set the type size to 13 points. I'll type League into the font name and select League Spartan. I'll then click the Align type to center. I'll click the color box, select a red, and start to type in capitals. I'll type the first letter, press enter, and type the second letter. Now, depending on the character settings, I'll come into the character panel and make sure there is adequate space between the type, the leading. I'll set this to 15 points and press enter. Once happy, I'll press and hold Command and D and press enter to deselect the type. If I want to refine the type size further, I'll press Command T and scale up or down. Now, depending on where the new type layer is in my layer structure, I'll click on it and drag it up to make sure it's set to the top of everything else. Now, I also want to apply the same white outer glow to this type as I did to the book. A quick tip here is to come to the book layer with the glow effect under the grass. I'll press and hold Alt on the keyboard, click on the FX icon on the layer and click and drag up to the new type layer. Upon release, this will duplicate the layer styles properties and apply them to this new type layer. Easy. So this is looking a little bright here. So I'll double click on the FX icon on my type layer and just toggle the opacity down slightly of the glow to around 50% and click OK. So now all this type is red. On this occasion, I want to add more color. So I'll press T and select the bottom letter. With it selected, up in the control panel, I'll click on the color square box and type in the value 06A6E9. This will give me a blue color, and I'll click OK. I'll then press and hold Command and D and press enter to deselect the type. So that's the header type. So I'll press T to activate the type tool again. This time I'll click in the space just under the header type. In the control panel, I'll keep the same font, though change the size to 6.5 points. I'll click in the color box and change the color to a darker blue. I'll type in 0377A7 and click OK. I'll click on the center align icon over to the right and I'll start to type, pressing enter to line break as I go along. Now, if the gaps between my lines are too big or small, with all the types selected, I'll come into the character panel and toggle the leading, like so. Soon, I'll have something that looks like this, and I'll press and hold Command and D and press Enter to deselect the type. If I want to refine the size further, I can press Command T and scale up or down. So I'll come into the Layers panel, select the type layers, and press Command G to group these into a folder, and I'll call the folder Type. So now all that's left to do is create the call to action button at the bottom. So I'll come into the Shape Builder tool and select the rectangle shape. I'll click the top layer in the Layers panel and click to draw a rectangle shape like so. Once placed, I'll use Free Transform to tweak the shape and position slightly. Once I'm happy with the shape, I'll press A to select the shape. Then up in the control panel, I'll click to change the fill color. I'll click the spectrum and type in the color value FAB-F36 and click OK. And make sure the stroke is set to transparent. So now this button is looking a little flat. In this instance, I want to give this a little effect to make it look more eye-catching. So with the new shape layer selected in the Layers panel, I'll press Command J to duplicate it. I'll press A to select the shape. Up in the control panel, I'll set the fill color to white. Next, I'll zoom right in and I'll press Command T. Now I'm carefully going to drag the corner points in so I can see about 2 pixels of the orange background around the white shape. I'll press Enter to commit. Next, I'll come up to the opacity of the layer and change to 40%, or simply press 4 on the keyboard. Next, I'll come down to the bottom of the Layers panel. With the shape layer selected in the Layers panel, I'll click the Add Layer Mask button. I'll come over to the menu, click and hold on the Paint Bucket tool and select the Gradient tool. I'll make sure my foreground and background color is set to black and white. If not, I'll just press D on the keyboard. Then click and drag down on top of my white shape, applying a mask and creating a nice gradient effect. I'll zoom out. So here I have a subtle white gradient effect, just to give it a little 3D button effect with the orange stroke around the side. Nice. So next I'm going to create the type for the button. So I'll come into the type folder, click the type layer under the header. With the move tool, I'll press and hold Alt and click and drag down like so to quickly duplicate the layer. In the layers panel, I'll move it up and out of the type folder on top of my shape layer. I'll press T to click into the type and change the type to Find Out More in caps like so. I'll select the type, click on the color box up in the control panel and change the color. In the value, I'll type DD510C and click OK. I'll press and hold Command and D and press Enter to deselect the type. Then I'll press Command T to toggle the size inside the box. Now notice I have left some space to the right of my box. Well, now I'm going to place a little arrow here. So I'll come into the menu and select the Shape tool and select the Custom Shape tool. Up in the control panel, I'll click down on Shapes. Over on the cog on the right, I'll click this and select Arrows from the menu below. I'll select a arrow shape here, come into my button and click to draw an arrow in my button like so. Upon release, up in the control panel, I'll make sure the fill color is set to the same as the type to the left. I'll click in the spectrum to the right, and up in the color picker, I'll type the value DD510C and click OK. And I'll set the stroke to transparent and press Enter. So I'll come into the layers panel, select the layers that make up this button, I'll group them together and call the folder CTA. So finally, I'll add one final type element. In the CTA folder, I'll click the Find Out More type layer, press and hold Alt and click and drag above. I'll press T and click into the type layer and type Out Now. I'll change the color to white, then resize and position accordingly. If I need to, I'll move some of the elements around in the composition to accommodate. I'll now select the book glow layer, the grass layer and the book layer. I'll group these into a folder and name this Book and Base. So now all my creative elements are neatly structured in these layer folders. Once happy, I'll press Command S to save. I'll navigate into my project folder and save. So that's how I adapted a book cover design and created a design for digital. Now, once I'm happy with this banner, it's now time to export for web. Now, in Photoshop, the process of exporting for web is different compared to exporting for print. In Photoshop, when exporting for web, we use a different function, the Export for Web feature. In the next video, I will be discussing and demonstrating how to use this feature. See you in the next video.